Project management CA2 activity.
Owen Halpin.
Holmburn.
TJ Redmond.
Ronan Duggan.
This presentation examines two key areas of project management within software development. First, it compares how agile methods handle client requirements differently from the traditional SDLC or waterfall approach. And secondly, it identifies 6 major project management challenges faced by project managers working in agile environments.
In traditional SDLC, the requirements for the system are gathered at the start of the project. This is because the client should fully understand what they want before any design or coding begins. During this early requirements phase, the team works with the client to document every feature or rule the system needs. And once this set of requirements is agreed upon, it becomes the fixed foundation for the rest of the project. And the development team then follows these requirements step by step. In comparison to this, for the agile method, instead of expecting the client to define everything in detail at the beginning, agile assumes the requirements will change over time and evolve as the team learns more about the project. The teams collect only high-level requirements at the start and place them in the product backlog. And these items are not meant to be final. They can be rewritten or expanded at any time. As the team works in short sprints, the client provides continuous feedback, helping refine requirements based on what they see in working software. This flexibility means Agile can adapt quickly when new ideas emerge or when the client's understanding improves.
So in a traditional approach, ownership is centralized. So basically what that means is you would have a developer project, for example, and only say the software team may have access to this. So in a traditional approach, that means that the accountants or no one else in the business would be trained in or honed in on the skills or the project itself or be in the loop and the know-how. Whereas in an agile approach, all the ownership is distributed across a team or many teams. So there's no sole ownership, which means that nobody is hogging information, as well as that you don't have to keep recruiting and changing staff or changing the workload since everyone is in the loop. This also boosts company morale since in a traditional sense, with the ownership being centralized, everyone works on a project and they never want that one project to end because they don't know what may be laid out for them further on down in the road. Whereas through an agile approach, everyone works towards more the company aspect as opposed to project. They want the company to progress and grow so that they can keep working on more and more projects.
Changes later in the project are discouraged, as in a traditional waterfall system. Changes that arise late in the project can cause major delays or require rework. Because the process is so structured, adding a new requirement might force the team to redo, design, work, or retest large sections of the system. And this makes change something to avoid, even when it could improve the final product. Sprint reviews allow the frequent feedback. At the end of each sprint, the team presents completed work to the client in the sprint review. This regular feedback loop helps catch misunderstandings early, confirm what's working, and adjust or add requirements quickly. It keeps everyone aligned and reduces surprise at the end of the project.
So once requirements are approved in a traditional SDLC, any change has to go through a formal change control process. That basically means paperwork, approvals, and schedule adjustments. Even small changes become slow and expensive, so the model isn't flexible when the clients need shift during the project. As opposed to Agile, which work is delivered in small time box iterations, so changing a requirement doesn't just throw the entire project off. The team can simply adjust the backlog and make the change in an upcoming sprint. Because the project isn't built in one long sequence, updates can be absorbed smoothly without causing major disruption.
So there's many problems with this. One of the first problems is small teams or team size in general. So your ideal scrum size would be 5 to 10 people. If you do have less than that, you could struggle to actually find enough people to give each task to. And if you have more than that, then it just becomes messy trying to delegate out tasks because everyone wants to be doing something, but you have too many people and not enough tasks. But in some projects, such as a software program, you'll often have a substantial group effort, which means you'd have too many people for just one scrum and too many tasks. So you'd break up everyone into smaller scrums, and that would then organize into scrums of scrums, which you'd organize based on the importance of the task. The issue with organizing your groups like this is it almost defeats the purpose of using a scrum method, as you end up back at the command and control where you have one person calling all the shots and not everyone is involved then, and as the scrum should be.
For general planning, the Scrum is sold as lightweight, but the planning stage is actually usually heavy. Teams need to estimate work using planning poker, assign story points, and constantly track historical data. All of this takes time and effort before any development even starts. The whole point of the planning meeting is to figure out what the team can realistically achieve in an upcoming sprint. This means breaking down tasks, understanding the work fully, and agreeing on what is achievable, which isn't always straightforward when requirements are vague or complex. In many organizations, planning a sprint can be a full day activity. That's usually 10% of the team's time gone before work even begins. For busy teams or fast moving companies, losing a full day every 2 weeks feels excessive and can slow everything down. What often happens is that planning shifts away from genuine discussion and becomes about hitting numbers, making sure velocity charts look consistent, making commitments the business expects, and trying to align everyone. It becomes more about maintaining metrics than about improving the product.
Planning velocity. So in terms of planning velocity, the velocity stands for a tool that helps the agile teams predict how much work they can realistically complete in a sprint. So in classes, we did sprints, we also did subsections of sprints. So for an example, if you had 30 points in a subsection and you're able to complete the 30 points in that scrum or in that sprint, well, then your velocity will be 30. So a project manager will then use that number, and that's how you can calculate future progress. That is all theoretical, though. In practice, it doesn't really work out the same, as it's difficult for project managers to rely on this metric since it involves consistent team performance as well as a stable sprint length, which nobody can know in an agile environment since the consumer can always change their mind. There's no fixed boundaries, I suppose. That's something as well that a project manager has to be open to. So to estimate accurately, they must clearly understand and be aligned with their team. Even if their estimates are precise, though, they are meaningless if the team is unreliable due to their unavailability or unexpected interruptions which may come into companies such as parental leave, etc. Additionally, if a sprint length changes or there are frequent changes and disruptions, the velocity becomes impossible to compare from one sprint to another. When the velocity fluctuates, the project manager cannot confidently forecast delivery timelines, plan releases, or set stakeholder expectations. This undermines one of the key benefits of agile planning and creates uncertainty for the entire project.
For planning commitments, before a sprint starts, the team has to commit to a fixed amount of work, and this becomes a promise the business expects them to keep. If the estimates are wrong or unexpected issues appear, then the team risks overcommitting, and that means falling behind. The scrum only works when the sprint stays protected. In real companies, last minute changes or emergencies, they often force their way in, breaking that stability. So when outside work interrupts the sprint, the team can't deliver what they promised. If commitment falls apart or the sprint gets interrupted, the entire time box structure collapses as well. The sprint stops being a fixed container of work, and then it turns into a chaotic to-do list, which basically defeats the purpose of a scrum. Velocity only works when the team delivers consistently. If the sprint gets disrupted or commitments are broken, velocity becomes meaningless and the numbers jump around, and then future planning goes out the window. When sprints constantly change or commitments aren't met, trust breaks down between the business and the team. The business feels like the team can't deliver, and the team thinks that the business is constantly interfering. That tension makes future planning impossible.
So task planning. Task planning is a major challenge in agile project management since it's impossible to predict all the tasks at the start. An initial kickoff meeting and design or technical discussion need to take place first in order to get a grip on what the initial tasks may be, and at that, everything can still be implemented afterwards depending on design requirement changes or what may be happening in social media. There might be different app options that developers might want to change. So in Agile assumes that requirements evolve and become clearer over time. However, this does create planning difficulties. When teams enter sprint planning without fully understanding how a feature will be implemented, they're forced to take a guess at tasks or create them on the fly, which generally leads to disaster. This leads to inconsistent task breakdowns because each developer may interpret the work differently and create their own task templates. As a result, the planning exercise loses value. The team cannot produce accurate estimates and the sprint goal become unclear, which also means that the sprint can transfer over to the next sprint, which leads to delays. Without clear shared task definitions, the project manager struggles to track progress, manage their dependencies, and identify risks early before they become a major problem within the company. Overall, the uncertainty around tasks introduces confusion, inefficiency, and rework, making it a significant challenge in terms of agile as opposed to a traditional approach.
Product ownership. So you need to have a product owner if yours going to be implemented. As a result, the entire product's life cycle gets placed into one person's hands, which is obviously a lot of pressure for the person who's given it, but also makes the entire process highly volatile. But the big question is, who should this person be? You might think it could be someone like a senior manager, but the problem with giving it to the higher ups is they have so much at stake, they can't be trusted not to interfere and get in the way of the scrum, as what they think is best might not be best. If a manager is in charge of the team, it would just be everyone would just do whatever they're told, as they'd be too afraid to say no to the manager and there's fear of losing their jobs. People would stop doing what they think is best and just do as they're told, and you end up losing the whole point of doing the scrum. And then this usually ends up with the product owner being the bad guy, as he ends up having to call all the shots. So it ends up with everyone being unhappy. You could also think of choosing someone from lower management, and then you could be left with someone who cannot make decisions or solve problems. And then once again, when everyone turns to the manager for problems, he doesn't have answers and the whole scrum falls apart.
Stakeholder involvement. So a significant project management challenge in agile projects is ensuring consistent and meaningful stakeholder involvement. Agile methods rely heavily on continuous interaction between the development team and stakeholders, particularly the product owner and the end users. This involvement is essential because agile decisions, for example, prioritizing backlog items, refining user stories, and reviewing incremental work, all depend on feedback and active participation from stakeholders. The reason this can be a problem is because stakeholders may be too busy, unavailable for sprint reviews, or slow to provide feedback on requirements. When stakeholder involvement is inconsistent, the agile team may be forced to make assumptions, leading to misunderstandings about needs or priorities. This can delay progress, reduce the quality of delivered increments, and even result in rework if the stakeholder later decides the feature does not meet expectations. The project manager must therefore play a crucial role in managing stakeholder expectations, scheduling engagements, and communicating the importance of regular participation.
Thanks for joining our presentation. We hope that we covered all the points necessary and enjoy your day.